1. Fragments of Silicon, a podcast as well seasoned as they come.
All right, welcome to the first, alpha episode or Wednesday show. The first main episode of the new season. Like, it gets a bit muddy to track because, technically speaking, our season began with our Sunday reviews. But, this is the first episode of the Wednesday program. So, no matter what show it is season 8. We've been off for a few weeks. Hopefully everybody's got their battery recharged because, we're back to the regular rounds. I'm your host, Adam, and joining me as always are, the regular crew of Ogre.
I'm always on low power.
Petty Fan.
Factory format required.
Galix.
Yes, I'm here. Any rumors to the otherwise are false.
And Twilight.
Yo.
I didn't. All right, so I suppose we should get to the news. Although how much of that, we want to disseminate, I suppose is up to, if anything happened during the break. So, let's see. Ogre, why don't you start us off?
Let's see here. During the break, we went out and managed to order our tuxedos for Naka and Barry's eventual wedding. Gonna get those in late August or so.
So
It's gonna be a big, busy-ass week already.
So how big a wedding are they going to have?
It's gonna be a small thing. Just some friends and family, so...
Oh, geez, I remember the pandemonium at my older brother's Australian wedding. That was done to the nines, let's just say. Many months of planning had to go into that.
I would imagine.
Let's see. I picked up a couple games during the break. Story of Seasons, Trio of Towns, which I haven't really gotten to play yet. I've been kind of busy elsewhere. And Ukulele, because it was on sale, and I thought, I need to get this game at some point. And then I got that game. And that's how that acquisition happened. And then, let's see, playthroughs are going fine. We started doing Blaster Master Zero, which finally got that one out of the way. I've been constantly bugging Naka about that at some point to do the original, and I guess this one just worked out better for everything.
Well, it's a pretty close remake from what I've seen. It's not a one-to-one, but I suppose close enough. Where where it would be rather redundant for him to do the original.
And they added like story and stuff.
Yeah. And then Final Fantasy XIV wise, the new raid tier came out a little while ago. And we've started raiding in that thing, and we managed to beat the first leg of it on the first night, actually. We were all kind of shocked at that. We've been kind of ramming against the second part a little much more than we care for, but we got it down to 15% and actually got to see it's in rage, so we know we can do it. We just got to get better about it. Just got to get better equipment and work out our strategies better. Yeah. Let's see. Other than that, not much. I'm still the culinarian around the house. Made some Swedish meatballs the other day. Were damn good. Damn good Swedish meatballs. But I did that all from scratch too, so somehow I'm becoming somewhat of a cook. But other than that, not much else, so I'm gonna pass it over to Petty because it's his turn to phase, and the boss is gonna do some unstable gravity.
Let's see. As far as news goes, my mom's gonna be getting her settlement from when she had her shoulder surgery because she got hurt at work. So she meets with the lawyers next month, and they said they're gonna try and pay me back something as well.
That
So
would be good.
yeah. Also, my keyboard's been having some issues. We don't know if it's just because it's been so hot or what, but I may need to be putting some of that money they give me into buying a new keyboard.
Damn thing tried to break on you partway through a raid.
No, it was actually just before we started, at least.
Oh yeah, there we go.
So yeah, that was fun. Other than that, just kind of been playing games. Like, I wish I could have streamed more during the off season, but whenever I wanted to stream, either something came up or Twitch was down. So yeah, sorry about that for those of you who enjoyed that, but them's the breaks.
All two of them are disappointed.
Outside of that, I don't think there's much going on in my life. So I guess
Right,
Scotty.
Yeah. Alex?
I've had a reasonably eventful few weeks, although a lot of it was work-based. The Yarmouth Clam Festival was this past weekend, so I managed to see some of my friends from college, although unfortunately they weren't all able to be there at the same time this year because, you get busier as life goes on. I finally got a chance to play Splatoon 2 yesterday. I got to level 4 in the multiplayer so that I could buy new weapons and clothes. And then I did the first world in a single player, and I plan to continue working on that possibly later tonight.
Does that
I
work
missed one of the
like
secret scrolls.
Splatoon 1, or did they change it for 2?
It works pretty similar. And I missed the opening rush of Salmon Run, which for some reason is not always available, so I haven't been able to try that.
That seems weird that that's not always available, seeing as one of the big features they were toting.
I know. Hopefully, it'll be more often than not, but it isn't right now. I don't think, or it wasn't when I was playing anyway. Also, just the other day, after seeing someone else do a demo of how it works, I actually downloaded Duolingo on my phone to practice my Japanese because I have not been practicing my Japanese enough for actual conversational purposes. So.
Fair enough.
I think I'm still mostly below my level, but I took the placement test to jump ahead, but it didn't jump me ahead far enough. But there are some things at this level that I don't know, so maybe it did. I don't know. I haven't started playing the game for this week, but I did have fun with the games that we reviewed this past Sunday. Especially not Black the Fall.
Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight, yes. I hope to be able to play that more sometime, but
I'm like,
yeah.
Spoiler alert. The direct comparison game we got this week is not nearly as good as either game we reviewed. But,
yeah, I was gonna say Toby looks sort of like that, but
let
me put it this way: it's not one I've heard of.
I'm like, I'll save the full review, but I just stopped playing it because I got bored with the game. Like, it's not like it's average at best. actually kind of sloppy and cheap design in some places, but more on that on Sunday. Like,
Well, we'll see.
yeah. Well, that's
Anyway,
been
yeah,
my
it's not-
experience. So, anyway,
Yeah, it's not like I thought. Excuse me.
you okay over there, Galix?
It's probably got a
Yeah, I
kernel
said
stuck in his throat.
I had a weird burp thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes, yeah. It's not like I thought Black the Fall was bad. It's just not the kind of game I like as much as.
well, it's like I'm having a hell of a time trying to figure out cycling.
Anyway, I don't think I have that much else to say, so I guess we can go on to Twilight.
All right.
Okay. Well, it's been miserably hot over here. Though, thankfully, we finally got some rain done during the past few days. And then during the break this last Saturday, I went and seen Spider-Man Homecoming.
How was that?
It was good. It's the best one out of the movies so far, in my opinion.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's probably due to writing mostly. Yes, and I've also been playing some multiplayer games with some friends of mine. Saints Row 4 and Borderlands 2. In terms of single player games, I've just been playing Atelier Sophie.
I've heard good
Sounds
things
that-
about that series, although
Atelier?
not much about any yeah, the Atelier series. Although I haven't heard much about any specific entries, except when Mac was talking about Eska and Loki.
Yeah, it's a pretty good series. I started off with Iris and played a few from there. I really enjoyed the series thus far. Besides that, nothing really all that profound's happened during the break. So that'll be it for me.
All right, I guess it's my turn. My time during the break was actually a fair amount was spent helping out Sister Show MSP, since we had a couple of shows to fill between Fragments of Silicon seasons.
I've had breakier breaks, and I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, it's like this show was on break, but MSP, due to I think a few delayed weeks there, was got desynced with this show, so we were actually doing stuff on Wednesdays during the break. Just everything else we usually do for this show got put on the back burner for a while. And as it stands, MSP is now on break for at least 2, maybe 3 weeks. Maybe longer. The long and short of it is Mac might be getting another job here soon, and we have no idea how that's going to affect the upcoming season of MSP. But it's one of those situations where we have to keep going along as normal until it happens. Speaking of which, he also wants to move the show down to 10 o'clock? That's...
Yeah, we'll see how this works, because making this show much earlier doesn't work very well for me. I don't know about you guys.
Well, it's furthermore, moving this show is currently booked till the end of August, I think, as far as Wednesday shows go. Looking at the calendar, only one there's only one Wednesday show in September I have to fill. That's at the end. So any sort of time shift involves me rescheduling a lot of stuff. And like I said, it's all kind of up in the air right now. Nothing's been decided. Forcing down MSP to the 10 o'clock hour is problematic for its own reasons, because I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but this show goes for about anywhere from an hour, 15 minutes to an hour and a half.
We certainly don't stick tightly to a 1 hour schedule.
I'm like, if we were going to stick to that, we'd have to do it more like the Tuesday show. Like, we get in, we do the interview, we get out. Or if we don't have an interview schedule, we do the topic. It's like time would be much tighter. This new segment would probably be axed. It's definitely the most superfluous thing we've got going, considering we repeat a lot of the same information on MSP. But given that they're different shows, different audiences and all that, I'm just saying, this segment would be the first to go. And, then the topic of discussion. But we'll see what happens on that front. As it stands right now, regular broadcasting is proceeding. And on that note, it's about time we move to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is actually the very first guest we ever had on this program, way back in October of 2013. It is our grand pleasure to welcome back to the program Micheal Hartman of Frogdice.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
No problem. It's like it's amazing how much things can change in 3 years.
Absolutely.
I'm mulling whether or not to go into your background because we've covered it on the program before, but that was such a long time ago. I don't think our present audience might know those details.
Okay.
So, we'd like to get started. I suppose our first question is, what got you interested in video games in the first place?
Well, it was definitely, starting playing games on the PC and then later on consoles. My parents were always very supportive of video games as a hobby. I think I had an Intellivision when I was in first grade. So video games have always been a part of my life. So it's not a huge surprise that I would maybe get into making them. For the longest time, I just made them kind of as a mess around, hobby as like a middle schooler, teenager. Never really thought it would be a job. And even my first game that I was making, basically mud-like games on BBSs when I was in college, that was a hobby. And even Threshold, our longest running game at Frogdice, that was started as a hobby. And it was basically just out of, I played games like that, and I was like, I wonder what would happen if somebody made one of these games with kind of a more professional outlook. Like instead of it just being like a computer science project, what if someone approached it, like a very professional project with really good writing and stuff like that? Like what would that be like? And that's kind of how Threshold happened.
And how long did Threshold exist as a purely amateur work?
Probably about 2 years. I mean, it basically launched in 1996, and I was still in law school at the time. And it probably wasn't until 1998 that I really thought that this was going to be a serious, full-time job. So for about 2 years, it was truly a hobby. And then, but I kind of was already thinking maybe, what could it be? But by 1998 was when it was definitely a serious, true business.
And what did the Threshold look like in the late 90s?
It honestly it looked the same that it looks now. I mean, it's a text-based game, so it looks the same. And in a lot of ways,
they changed the font.
But yeah, so looked very much the same, just not as many systems, not as much content, all that kind of stuff.
And were you the only one to be working on the game
Yes,
during the first?
for a really long time, probably until at least 2001. So for the first like 5 years of the game, I was the only one, and then I met my wife through the game, and and then she learned to code and she became a developer. Um, and so then we kind of just grew from there. And then for a while, it was just her and I running the running the company and making the game. And then in 2015, we really started expanding, growing, and hiring more people and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Well, not 2014, not 2015.
And was that for Threshold, or was that for other?
No, that was to start. That's when we started making other games like
Mhm.
uh, Coin and Carry, and then Tower of Elements, and Dungeon of Elements, and Rainmaker, and all those our kind of puzzle RPGs that we have on Steam,
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember. I think when we interviewed you back in 2013, you were making Tower of Elements.
That's could be. Yeah, I'm not sure what we were. I'm not sure. I don't even remember which one we. I think we were maybe doing a Kickstarter for Dungeon of Elements at the time. I think
Could be.
that's what we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was a while ago, so
Right.
I do remember Elements
Yep.
in the title, so it was definitely one of the two. I'm like, but I'm focusing on Threshold here because, as I understand it, it's kind of the precursor to what you're working on right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
Like, and that is the game Stash.
Right.
All right. So for the uninitiated, what is Stash?
Stash is an MMO with turn-based combat, a huge
Mhm.
focus on housing, and more loot than you can fit in a portable hull. So that's kind of how we describe it. So it's very tabletop style. Like you move like a kind of a miniature representation of yourself around the world map and into dungeons. And combat is turn-based with a grid. Like tabletop kind of pen and paper style combat a little bit. And then your your house, or it's called your boo, your base of operations, is almost half your character in and of itself. So many different ways that you develop and expand and upgrade your house makes your house almost as important as your character.
Okay. So there's quite a bit to unpack here. I suppose the first question is, why turn-based combat?
Well, we really like the more cerebral nature of it. There's more strategy, more thinking involved. Sometimes some people call Stash like the thinking man's MMO, and that's definitely true. So there's a lot more thought and planning and strategy involved. It also is very latency resistant. So if people have issues with internet, it's far more tolerant of stuff like that. It's not your ping doesn't really matter, which is kind of nice. Um, and also it's different. There's a zillion third person over the shoulder camera perspective MMOs with white damage and special damage and stuff like that. So we wanted to do something different, we also kind of wanted to harken back to some RPGs that we loved, like the Gold Box D&D games, Baldur's Gate, Planescape, those kind of games where you really planned out each round of combat and what you were going to do.
Right. And so, how does turn-based combat work in the confines of an MMO?
Well, first of all, it's only turn-based in combat. So when you're like running around the world doing stuff, that's all real time, of course.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like when you just want to move around the world, you're not turn-based at that point. But in combat, you enter an encounter and there's a grid. It could be 10 by 10, it could be 15 by 15, it could be L-shaped, it could be all kinds of different shapes for the little grid depending on what kind of dungeon you're in or something like that. And then enemies can be at various locations. They could have you surrounded, they could be in formation. There's all kinds of different ways the combat can start. And then each player in the party, everybody rolls for initiative, just like D&D or something. And people take their turn. By default, you have 30 seconds to take your turn, but the leader of your party can change that time to less or more. So if you want a really fast paced, you might set that to 5 or 10 seconds. So yeah, and so then but it also opens up for a lot of cool stuff like flanking and you know surrounding your enemy and pinning your enemy against an obstacle and a lot more positional type strategy that works really well on a grid that doesn't really work as well in in a real time third person where lag can make someone look like they're in a certain spot when they really aren't. A lot of different strategies that you can use on a grid that really don't work in a like real time third person perspective. So
And how many people can be in a party?
right now it's 6, so you can have 6 people in your party. Um, but then there could be 10, 15, 20 enemies sometimes in a really big battle. So you can have pretty good sized battles, even though it's turn based.
And I suppose another question there is, given a battle of that size, you can set the time parameters for your party. Can you set the time parameters for the enemy attacks as well?
You don't really need to because they move pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Like they move almost instantly. Their AI is processed very quickly. So usually
So
whenever
it's strictly PvE.
right now, yeah, we will have PvP. It's planned for, and we definitely will do that. We're probably going to focus on party versus party rather than trying to balance every class against every class for PvP.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah.
Makes sense. It's just I have played strategy games where the enemy has a lot of troops and they don't take, they're not instantaneous. And
Yeah, they move pretty quickly. You're really never waiting on the enemies to move. I mean, when it's their turn, they basically move almost immediately. Figure out what they're going to do because it's not like a chessboard where they have to figure out. They're not like their AI is not planning massive numbers of moves in advance like it would be if it was chess or Go or something like that. You know what I mean?
right. Well, it's one of those things that you don't pay attention to until you see it done wrong.
Right.
It's like because if you've got a large battle and every turn takes a certain amount of time, that adds up very
Right.
quickly.
Yep.
Right. So that's good to hear, especially since it's more than one player.
Right. You can play solo, and we generally try to say, I think the way we normally say it is solo play is plausible, but group play is preferred. So we definitely want to design the game so that group play is kind of prioritized, but playing solo is completely plausible. And that's why, and I say that not just possible. It's you can play solo just fine, but we definitely design things to encourage grouping because that's what makes MMOs special. But then again, people's schedules are such that we always want solo play to be completely viable.
And how do you balance that?
Well, the good thing, we have a lot of kind of design things that we do differently than a lot of MMOs. Like, for example, there's virtually no drops that bind to your character. So anything that you get, any kind of loot, can be sold or traded. So even if there's some, dungeon boss that's really difficult and you can only really beat it with a group, if you're a solo player, you can still buy that stuff from someone. So it's not like, oh, well, the only way to get this item is to farm this boss. You know what I mean? That's not true.
That's good to hear. Right. So before I continue on with my line of questioning, I'll see if the people who actually play the MMOs have any of their own questions.
Okay, sure.
So like, what kind of classes are available?
Well, we wanted to, especially for balance purposes, we started off pretty basic. It's warriors, healers, hunters, and elementalists. So there's only 4 core classes that are really kind of cover a lot of the standard roles. And then, as we get the game fully launched and balanced, and we'll start rolling out more classes.
And does it go like, I guess, what's considered the Holy Trinity system, where it's a tank role, a healer role, and a DPS role, or is it like anybody can kind of tank a boss or whatever?
I'd say we definitely make use of the Holy Trinity, but we make sure that every class has, a secondary role as well. So elementalists don't only do damage; they have a little bit of CC. Hunters do damage, but they also provide a lot of utility. Warriors primarily tank, but they also can do damage. And healers, they heal and buff and CC. They're the primary support utility class, but they wear chainmail, so they're actually pretty sturdy. So they can be like a backup tank if need be. So we definitely respect the Holy Trinity, but we make sure that every class has some alternate options as well.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But elementalists cannot tank, hunters cannot tank, so it's not everybody can do everything.
And like, how is hate handled? Do you have like a specific system for aggro, or is it just whoever hits it the hardest?
We don't do we don't do aggro that way at all. Like mobs have AI. They have like things they prioritize. They either maybe certain classes they don't like, certain races they don't like, certain amounts of health remaining that attracts them, and then also position on the battlefield. So there are like warriors do have some taunts, so there are ways that you can kind of override that. But for the most part, the equivalent of hate is really more based on manipulating figuring out the AI, like figuring out what they want to do. Like certain mobs, maybe they hate elementalists, and certain mobs, maybe they have a lot of bloodlust, and so they really come for people that are under 50% health. And you figure out all these tendencies for these mobs, and then you try to exploit them and make use of them on the battlefield. And say there's someone who they really hate elementalists, well, you might move your elementalists in a certain part to lure them into a certain area of the battlefield that's kind of obstructed, and then you can surround them and get damage bonuses. So it's really, instead of being hate based, it's more AI based, and taking advantage of that.
It's kind of interesting. Anybody else have any more questions?
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. I'll pick things up here. Can you choose your gender in this game, and does that have any effect on gameplay?
You can choose your gender, and it has absolutely no gameplay impact whatsoever. It doesn't affect any of your stats. It doesn't affect anything at all. It's purely cosmetic. Now, there are humans right now are the only race that you can be male or female. So the other races, it's only male or female. So you have to kind of pick that way. We do eventually plan to make female versions and male versions, depending on which race it is, except for the Dryad race, which will always be female only.
Right. And how many races are in the game right now, and how many are planned?
There are 5. There is a human Dryad, Trolloc, which is like a big stone troll type race, Lukoi, which is like a wolf-like race, Catfolk, which is kind of obvious. So those are the 5 right now. We have a bunch of others planned. There's one called Leklex. They're kind of like gnomes. We do have an elf-like race. They're called Tlei. And I think that's it for the kind of the short-term plan. So 7 or 8.
Interesting. It sounds like you're coming up with a bunch of your own terminology.
Yeah, definitely. Like I mean, it all fits in the lore of the world. Like all of our games, actually, the lore has been built on through all of these games. So it's the same game world from Threshold through all of our puzzle RPGs, all the way through to Stash. Like Threshold is 4,000 years earlier in the history of the world compared to Stash. And our puzzle RPGs like Dungeon Developments and Rainmaker, they're closer to the time of Stash. They're like, 1 to 40 years before Stash. So the things that happened story wise in those games built towards what you have now in Stash.
So all of your games are taking place in the same universe?
Yes.
And how do you come up with all of the lore, and how do you keep everything consistent and all that stuff?
Well, all the writing and all the lore is done by myself or my wife. So by having just two people doing all that, that helps keep everything consistent. And we're always discussing how we want things to go in the world and the story and everything like that. But with that said, we implement a lot of stuff that players do. Like a ton of the game's lore is things that players have done in our games. I mean, mostly in Threshold, because obviously the puzzle RPGs being single player, we didn't really interact directly with the players. Although there are a few things that happened. Players did things and they would send us screenshots and tell us stories of things they did. And there are a few things that we implemented like that as well. But in our games, always, we like to involve our players and, let their contributions to the game world have a permanent effect.
Do you have a setting Bible written down, or?
No, we don't. We do have a wiki for the world. Right now it's at wiki.primordiax.com. The name of the game world is called Primordiax. Like that's the name of the game world that Stash and everything takes place in. So we do have a lot of lore there, and we're actually copying a lot of that over to our Stash wiki so people can find it easier along with Stash game information. And that
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's sort of like a setting Bible, but it's a wiki.
A little bit, yeah, absolutely.
All right. And how much of a connection is there between Stash and its predecessor? Not just in Threshold, not just in terms of story, but like in mechanics and all that stuff. Is there a lot of transference in that regard?
Game mechanics, not so much, because Threshold's combat is real time. It's like, kind of a standard mud heartbeat related combat where there's like a scroll of things happening constantly. But there are abilities that are similar. There are spells that have carried over from Threshold to Stash. There are magic items. There are locations in the game world, obviously, that have carried over, that have things that have survived the 4,000 years. So there are some game mechanic things, but the games play, and of course Threshold's text-based, so it's a command line interface. So gameplay wise, there's very little similarity. There are just things from the game that have made their way into Stash.
And have any of the veteran Threshold players made their way to Stash yet?
Yeah, quite a few. Although I do think a lot of them are waiting to see, how things happen when we have our leave early access. And then also there's always a certain amount of loyalty to your home game. So there are some that play both. There are some that have just switched, like they had their Threshold time, and like we have players that were longtime Threshold players that hadn't played in 5 to 10 years, and when Stash came out, they started playing Stash. So it's brought some people in our community back, which is pretty cool. And then there's some people that play both, but then there's some that are just fans of one or the other.
And what's been their feedback so far?
I think most of them, they really like the fact that they can play another game and a graphical game that takes place in the universe that they love, and with the community that they really like. Because the community is one of the most special things about Frogdice. Having been around this long, and people being a part of it for so many years, and people meeting spouses through our game, having kids. So the community means a lot to people. So having a more modern game that keeps them as a part of the community is something they're excited about. It also makes them feel like there's more of a guarantee of longevity of the community, stuff like that. So, and then also, like I said, they love the world, and they like to be able to play another game in that world.
Neat.
In fact, my wife just mentioned to me that another another, we call them a threshold wedding, just happened this past weekend. So, um, yeah, so that happens all the time.
Hmm. And let's see, still so much to cover. You made a bit of a deal about the housing. You call it half the game.
Yes.
So exactly what can you do with the housing? And does it affect gameplay, or is it like something else?
Well, you first of all crafting happens in your house. So you have to get crafting machines, forges, foundries, ovens, stuff like that. They all go in your house, either indoors or outdoors. So all crafting happens there. Your quote bank, which is your stash, is in your house. And as you upgrade your boo, part of upgrading that is upgrading your stash so it can hold more capacity. So that's obviously really important, a place to store all of your stuff. It's also you have a market stall out in the outdoor land of your boo, and that's where you can put items up for sale on the market. Now, our market is not an auction house, and it is deliberately not an auction house. It is more like a market where you advertise certain items, and people can browse an in-game newspaper to see ads, and that's how people find your market, your stall, and then they can click on it and browse everything that you have for sale. And if you find crafters or regular merchants who keep their stall really well stocked, you can favorite them and visit them later. So it's more about building your reputation as a seller than it is just having the cheapest price on an auction house. But that's another thing that's there in your boo. Um, and then future features, there'll be things where you can, well, and then obviously there's just decorating your house, bringing home loot, bringing home, awesome, cool things you find in dungeons and putting them in your house to show off. And then eventually there may even be functional things like magic items you put in your house that provide buffs and stuff like that.
Hmm. And is there any sort of size limit on your house?
Yeah, I mean, it starts off as a bedroll, like, and you've got nothing. You just have a bedroll in the middle of the grass, and then you can upgrade it to like a little, a tent, and then a little hut, and then a cottage, and then a house, and then a mansion, and then a castle, and so it progresses massively as you upgrade it. And then once you go inside, depending on how far upgraded it is, you can have more rooms inside, and you build those yourself. When you go inside, it starts off just one little room, and you can start branching off rooms off of that and build hallways and rooms and change the size. They can be 2x2, 4x4, 6x4, all kinds of stuff. Multiple stories, change the walls, change the floors, furnishings, both functional furnishings and cosmetic furnishings. So I mean, you can tinker around in your boo forever.
Hmm. And what sort of customization can you do?
Well, I mean, you got tons of different wall coverings, tons of different floors. I mean, I can't even hundreds and hundreds of furnishings. Like I said, some are functional and some are just cosmetic. Beds, tables, chairs. I mean, lamps, all kinds of things. And then functional things like, food processors and alchemy tables and enchanting tables and disenchanting tables and armor deconstructors and all kinds of stuff. I mean, there are just hundreds of things you can have inside and outside your boo. Statues and cool stuff like that. You can invite people to come visit your boo, and they can come and hang out and check out everything and chat. Another thing we do plan also is mini games that you can buy and install in your house, so people can be in your house playing a mini game. So it's like you're playing a game in your house
Hmm. And are there guild halls in the game?
Not currently, but there will be, and they'll basically function a lot like the boo, but they'll be on a guild level.
Hmm. And indeed, how are guilds going to work in Stash, or
We call them, yeah, we have them. We call them clans, and they're a pretty big feature in the game. Also, I mean, there's all the kind of standard stuff where you have a leader and they invite people and they can set up to, I think we have 11. You can have up to 11 different ranks. And there's all kinds of permissions, whether they can invite, whether they can set the message of the day. Eventually, when they have the guild halls, there'll be permissions for who can decorate, who can't, who can take things in and out of the guild storage, who can spend honor. Their clans earn honor through various tasks in the game, and then that honor is basically how clans rank against each other, and then they can spend that honor to do upgrades to their clan. So, some ranks can spend that honor, some ranks can't, stuff like that. And eventually, the big thing is clans will be able to take over outposts in different regions of the world, and those outposts can then get leveled up and become like hub towns throughout the world. And however well they run those hub towns will attract more players wanting to use that as their hub. And then that hub, basically, by people using that hub, that adds to their clan's power as well.
And let me see here. How many people can be in a clan?
There's no maximum currently.
Okay.
Well, I imagine the maximum at least would be the number of people who can be on a server.
Right, which also currently have no maximum. So we'll kind of see where that ends up.
Makes sense. Right. So, how far along is the game currently?
Really far along. I mean, all the things I've talked about, there's only 2 or 3 things that I had to do the old. We're planning this, like the mini games in your house and the clan outpost, and the clan housing are really the only 3 things that aren't done. Everything else is really done. The game's extremely far along. We've been working on it for about 3 years. So, really now we're mostly, a few little features here and there getting added in, but we're mostly just balancing and polishing and stuff like that.
And I suppose the game is on track for a September release.
We're looking at August 10th, actually, right now.
Okay. Wow, that's just around the corner, actually.
Yep, absolutely.
And what is the pricing setup of the game? Is it free to play? Is it subscription based? Something else?
Right now, it's basically, I guess, buy to play, since you have to buy either the $15 or the $50 package on Steam. But you get $15 or $50 worth of in-game currency along with, other items. So you kind of get your quote unquote get your money back, with in-game money. It will eventually be free to play. We're actually planning for that August 10th launch to be when we leave early access and potentially also go free to play at the same time. So, and then that $15 package is most likely going to increase in cost to $20. So it'll have $20 worth of currency and all the other items. So you'll still be able to get those packages through Steam, but you'll have other options also.
And how necessary will buying these packages be?
It won't be necessary to buy the packages, but we definitely don't consider what we normally like to call, honestly, is free to play. While we don't have any problems with that term, we don't consider it a free game, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, if your goal is to find a game that you can play for free forever, like, that's probably not going to work. I mean, there are definitely things that you're going to want to buy, and there's definitely things in the game. Now, there's nothing that limits you. Like, you don't hit like a paywall, or you know what I mean. You don't, there's nothing like that.
Well, I suppose my central question is, how grindy is this going to be if you don't put any money into it?
Well, I will tell you that our game, whether you put money into it or not, is going to be grindy. We love it. We love a grind. I love a grind. As long as it's fun, I love a grind. But most of the things you buy aren't about what you can. There are XP boosts you can buy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to pull up the shop right now. But the biggest one you can buy is a 50% XP boost. You know what I mean? Like,
so it's mostly money for like customization items.
And yeah, it's mostly customization, cosmetics, and convenience. Those are the 3. We call those like the three C's of our of our free-to-play philosophy.
But you can't buy like the ultimate sword of awesomeness that would like kill something in one hit or whatever.
You actually can't buy any usable gear. You know what I mean? Like I never want to say there will never be anything you can buy because who knows? You never want to trap yourself.
Yeah.
But there is currently not a single item on the medallion shop that is a like functional as far as combat. Like there's no armor, there's no weapons, not even one. There are lots of cosmetic items. There are mounts that help you get around the game faster. There is, expanding your storage. I mean, when I say that you're going to definitely want to buy things, like you're going to want extra bag slots. Although a lot of these you can buy with either in-game coin or medallions, but obviously it's faster to buy those with medallions. There's you can have up to 9 bag slots on your character. The 9th one you can only buy with medallions. So now you don't need that one, but if you want to maximize how much stuff your character can carry, well, that's 9 bag slots. And right now, the biggest bag is a medallion only. So there are a few things that are medallion only, but the vast majority of things, I'd say 90% of the things on the medallion shop, you can buy with triads, that's in-game coin, as well as medallions. And the things that are on there are, like I said, cosmetics, convenience, customization.
That's certainly a lot. And, my main concern about the grind is, it becomes unfun because, I played mobile games and, the grind there is to get as tedious as possible, or it just takes too long to get anywhere. So you're kind of forced to buy stuff.
Right. Like the only thing that we even have that's even slightly boosty, we have a 25% XP boost and a 50% XP boost. They both last for 2 hours. You know what I mean? There will probably be like a crafting XP booster as well. That'll be similar, but that's not really a tremendous amount of XP boost. And you're gonna spend a lot of time earning XP, especially once you get 20 plus. Because we're definitely not a race to the end game. Like you're supposed to, especially once you get 20 plus, because the game goes to like level 100, and then after that you have hegemon levels, which are infinite. So level 100 is not in game. There is no in game. I mean, it's designed for you to kind of savor every level. After level 20, it's going to take you, depending how much you grind, days or weeks to gain a level. It's not going to be fast. So
how do the inventory slots work that are limited then?
You have you start the game off with a 24 slot backpack, and so you have 24 slots for items. It's slot based like that. Every item takes 1 slot, and then you can have up to 9 bag slots, and then 8 of those you can unlock with triads or medallions. The 9th one you can only unlock with medallions, and then you can fill them with different bags. You could get little. They always come when you unlock a bag slot. It comes with a 6 slot bag, so you always get at least 6 new inventory slots. But then you can go on the medallion shop, and when I call it the medallion shop, like I said, the majority of things on the medallion shop you can buy with triads or medallions. It's just one convenient location for everything.
Right.
And then you can buy, all the way up to a 24 slot bag there. So you could have 9 24 slot bags in your inventory. Now, like I said, the 24 slot one is medallions only, but you could buy a 22 slot one with triads. So the medallion only one is only 2 slots bigger than the coin only.
Okay,
So,
I gotcha.
you know what I mean? So you could have 9 if you were just completely broke and couldn't buy anything and wanted to just completely play the game. You could unlock your 8 slots, 22 bags, 22 slot bags, and you'd have what is that, 204 slots, I think, if I did my math right there.
Something like that. Yeah, the reason I ask about that is because I was wondering how much influence inventory slots would have on how easy or hard it is to grind, like based on how much stuff you can carry around at once.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an advantage, because if you can carry more stuff, then You don't have to go back to town as often. Another one of our future features though is pack animals that you can use instead of a mount, and you can load up your pack animal and send it back to your boo. Now it might have, depending how far away you are, it might have a 10 or 20 minute or 30-minute return time, but you can load it up with loot, send it back. It'll dump everything in your stash, come back to you after a while. So you'll have that as an option also. Now you also
Okay.
get every hour you can use your hearth ability, which takes you back to the main city. So theoretically, as long as you have enough bag space to grind for an hour, you can always get back to town, immediately and dump off all your stuff. Um, but but I mean, it is an RPG, and inventory management is important. Deciding what items you're going to keep and what items you're going to not, what items you're going to leave behind. That's definitely part of the learning process and deciding, hey, I want to bring this item back. This loot is good. This loot is not good. That kind of stuff.
Okay.
You will make decisions, and even if you have, 9 slots and the biggest bag, you're still going to have to make decisions. So
Right. It seems like you've definitely keyed this to people who like playing MMOs and like muds and stuff in a certain kind of way,
right.
which I hope works out for you.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so too. Thank you.
Right. And so what's post launch support going to look like?
Well, we have no other project on the horizon. So once we launch, we're still going to be working on this game, 100% full time. We expect that when more people are playing, we expect and plan for things to happen. Bugs, hopefully not too catastrophic. So there'll probably be things we have to fix, exploits people will find, balance issues people will find. So upon immediate launch, we'll probably be working on that for a bit. But I mean, we have content planned out for years, so there will never be a shortage of new features that we want to get in the game. And then very soon, we really hope to be able to turn some of our attention towards story and world events and stuff like that, because that's always been a really big part of our games, like Threshold, is big story events that move the world lore forward. So we definitely want that to be part of Stash also.
All right. I think that'll about do it for my line of questioning. Anything else from you guys?
I think I'm good.
I didn't really wait with most of my questions.
Yeah.
So unless we have time to go into more like actual questions about the world of the game, because now I am somewhat curious since you've been going into that. But if we start on that, we could go for, it sounds like you could go for a long time. So maybe it'd be best to save that for next time.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. I could talk about that forever.
Well, unfortunately, we do not have that time. It is about 10 o'clock, and we have to move on to the next segment. But Micheal, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us this week.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing I should mention, just because I would be remiss if I didn't, is that the game's website is stashrpg.com, and you can already get the game on Steam right now. And the sooner you get in, the bigger impact you can have. Well, we also have a Discord, and I mean, I'm there. I check it so religiously. I mean, if I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I usually check it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of communication with the developers, especially people that get involved now. So it's definitely a good time to get involved with the community when you're gonna have a huge impact on making it be the kind of game you want it to be.
Indeed. And will this game only be on Steam? And also, is it Windows only, or is it for Mac and Linux as well?
It's Windows, Mac, and Linux, and we really, really hugely want to get it on mobile because we actually think it would work really well, especially on tablets, which is another cool thing about it being turn-based, and you don't have as heavy of performance requirements as you have like in a third-person game, or the fact that it's so twitchy that you could trying to play that on mobile would be impossible. We really do want to get it on tablets eventually, which would be cool. But yeah, for now it's PC, Mac, and Linux just through Steam. Mainly just because that's a really easy way to maintain patches and updates. Unity has done some cool things that we may be upgrading to in the future, which would allow us to easily patch on our own. And if we do that, we might make a client available through our own website. But for the near future, it's going to be through Steam only, but PC, Mac, and Linux.
Okay. All right. Once again, thank you for stopping by. The game is Stash. It's available right now for $15 or $50, depending on which package you want to purchase. And it should be noted, if you don't, if you get it after launch, the $15 tier is going up to $20.
That's right.
I suppose my last question here is, will there be any other tiers after launch?
You know, it's been heavily suggested to us that we should have a $100 tier as well, and so we are strongly considering that. But if we do, we'll most likely have a way that people can upgrade. Like we have one now, like people can upgrade from the citizen tier to the founder tier. So it's not like jumping in now would mean you missed out. So if we do add that tier, we'll have a way for people to upgrade to it if they want.
All right. Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right. Petty Fan, do you need any time to get the game onto screen?
Nope.
All right. So after we had this topic planned out late last season, it got delayed for a couple of reasons. Other topics came up, and then last time we were planning on doing this, the show exploded, or rather, Petty Fan's connection exploded, and kind of everything collapsed around that. But here we are, and we're going to talk about Bubsy. And I'm sure the question might be, why are we talking about Bubsy? In case
certainly, we've all tried to forget it.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think I'm like, in terms of forgettability, we'll get into that in a little bit, but I mean, the main reason is about a month ago. I'm not sure how much time has passed, but the point is, Bubsy got a new game announcement. And yeah, nobody was expecting this, mainly because nobody was really wanting a Bubsy remake or a Bubsy sequel or Bubsy anything. It's like, the mascot that everyone wants to talk about in terms of like YouTube videos is Crash Bandicoot. Lord knows I've seen an insane amount of Crash Bandicoot remake videos lately.
Well, that's because they're apparently really good remakes.
Well, yeah, they're really good remakes, and it's also, Crash Bandicoot was a genuinely beloved character.
Yeah, like when they killed him off, in the late 2000s, a lot of people were fucking heartbroken.
Sort of, but by that point he was kind of limping along in the radical entertainment era, which is not very well liked for its art style. But
what the hell were they thinking with Minor Mutants?
That's a topic for another day. I know we've covered like Crash and the early Crash games on this program previously, but
we did talk about the decline, but
but Bubsy, this is a topic I wasn't really expecting to broach because I like the rest of the
silent for what, 20 years?
Yeah, it's like I, like the rest of the world, assumed that Bubsy was a long deceased relic of the 90s. But perhaps that's part of the problem here. If it is indeed a problem, because it's been about 20 years since the last installment of the game. So it's like the nostalgia filters would be kicking in if there was any nostalgia for Bubsy.
Well, and I think
No.
part of it is a lot of the YouTube videos of fairly recent.
Well, yeah. Well, this is kind of what I'm getting at here. Bubsy is a remembered character. I'm like, there's certainly a lot of proof to that, but I'm like, Bubsy's kind of become, a symbol, maybe the symbol of all that was wrong with 90s gaming. Not even joking about that. I'm like, I challenge you to find a positive video on Bubsy the Bobcat. I have literally never seen a positive word said about this game franchise.
It's basically they came up with an idea for. No, they didn't come with an idea for. They came up with a desire for an attitude mascot like Sonic, cobbled one together, then half-assedly remembered that they had to have a game to put it in, and then half-assed that. So at the end, the game is like something like a 16th of an ass.
Well, actually, it's an unholy fusion.
And then the second game had Nerf sponsorship because sure, why not?
Well, getting back to the first game, which is the only one I actually played back in the day, because part of the reason why Bubsy's probably so remembered is Accolade pushed the shit out of him.
Oh yeah.
It's like, he may not have been beloved by anyone but its publisher, and they tried to make him a thing.
They tried to make him the face of Apogee.
Accolade.
Accolade, yeah, that's my mistake.
Apogee is a completely different publisher.
Yeah, I misspoke. My bad.
Yeah, I'm like, now. Yeah, and he was yet another, Sonic ripoff. I'm like, in the usual vein, like maybe he didn't have as much visual attitude as Sonic, but that was made up by verbal attitude.
What could possibly
Which he had
Yeah.
way before Sonic had.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that allowed Sonic to become legitimately endearing to people. He didn't fucking talk until like Sonic Adventure.
Like, yeah, he talked
At
in the
which point he was
cartoons,
already
but
liked.
those were already well defined as something separate from the games.
Yeah, it's like, Jaleel White wasn't the voice of 16-bit Sonic or anything like that, thank God. But I'm like, Bubsy actually had the same voice actor like throughout. Fairly notable one, Rob Paulson. He like the voice of Yakko, a whole bunch of roles here. And this is one of the few that he does not look back with kindness. I can't say if he outright hated playing Bubsy, but he didn't enjoy it. It's the only other role that I can think of that he's actively bashed was Coconut Fred.
And the less said about Coconut Fred, the better.
Right. And, it's important to note, because Bubsy, well, like a lot of mascots, the games was just the beginning. Like, the end game plan here was to have a multi-tiered merchandising empire like Sonic, like Mario, Pac-Man, Mega Man, so on and so forth.
Something that would let them sell like $30 red exclamation point T-shirts.
Yeah, I'm like, the plushies, the merchandise. It got as far as a television pilot. I'm like, which is pretty goddamn awful.
Oh yeah. Spoilers. That's up on YouTube, by the way. I would not recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, from what I understand, it was included in like the PC version of Bubsy, Bubsy 1. Like, or I think that was called like Super Bubsy or something like that. Like, the point is, it was a bonus feature for those lucky enough to have bought the PC version. I'm sure they were cheering furiously for that.
And many a floppy disk was snapped in anger.
Yeah. I'm like, and I should note that the speech is probably the reason why Bubsy is among the worst of the 90s mascots.
Because he had a very attitudey voice and very many catchphrases, and all of them were annoying when they got yelled at you every 5 minutes in gameplay.
It's one of those, think of Gex, but far, far worse.
Yeah, it's like, unfunny and repetitious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Gex is at least mostly like snarky and deadpan, as opposed to being enthusiastically sarcastic and just sort of generally a pain in the butt.
Obnoxious.
Yeah.
In terms of pure terrible mascots, the only one that really supplants that is Awesome Possum. Another mascot that gets made fun of with regularity, because not only the derivative design, the shitty game. The Awesome Possum had a very, very forced environmental message. Another showcase of the early 90s. But I'll say Bubsy is worse. I'll say Bubsy is the worst mascot because he actually got about 4 games. That is 4 more than he ever should have gotten.
And at least 1 more than I knew about.
Yeah, I'm like, like I said, Bubsy was certainly pushed back in the day. I think if there was a Bubsy game that people have actually played, it's the first one, and so I can tell you directly what went wrong with this particular game. Well, the core problem is they tried to fuse Mario's gameplay with Sonic's gameplay. I'm like, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Can confirm. Oh god.
Yeah. Oh, and they also ratcheted the not so much the difficulty rate, but the fake difficulty rate, because Bubsy the Bobcat is a very fragile individual.
Yeah.
They put fall damage in this game.
Which is a thing that should not be in platformers that focus on jumping.
No, it's like a platformer with fall damage. I'm like, are you insane? Yes. Of course, the enemies all kill you in one shot. Certain objects that you might not figure out will kill you in one shot.
Oh, there are convertibles that you can't even jump on, or they kill you.
Right. The level design is all over the place. Like, you can enter passages that'll send you back to the beginning of the level. And so on and so forth.
And unlike Mario and Sonic, there aren't power-ups to give you one hit. There's an invincibility power-up, but you don't get, like, mushrooms or rings.
See, they give you 9 lives, not just because it's a cat pun, but it's because...
Any less and you'd never make it anywhere?
Yeah, it's one of those... We knew we made the game really hard, so our solution is to give you a shit ton of lives.
So our solution is a pun.
Yeah, a.k.a. the bad solution.
Right. So, yeah. Bubsy 1, terrible game, terrible everything, but quite clearly sold quite a bit because not only did we get an animated pilot, that pilot actually feeds into Bubsy 2, because that's where Bubsy's fucking nephew and niece.
Oh god, you had to bring those up.
Yeah. Thing 1 and Thing 2? Oh god.
Because one obnoxious cartoon Bobcat wasn't enough?
Like,
there's a special place in hell for the fucker who designed them.
Yeah, I'm like, admittedly, I steered clear of Bubsy too.
Like the fucking plague.
Literally, like I've mentioned it a couple times in our discussions about it, and once on this show already. But literally, the only thing I remember about this game is from seeing it in Nintendo Power that one of the power-ups that you get in the game, or one of the things you get in the game, is a legit Nerf bazooka.
Branded.
Right.
Yep.
from what I've seen, like the game is like apparently it's marginally better. Like, but yeah, it's definitely gotten better, but not too much so. I guess forgive me for my fragmented take on Bubsy 2, but after Bubsy 1, I didn't want to play this anymore, like ever. Yeah. Now, the secret hidden Bubsy game is Bubsy and Fractured Furry Tales. It's a game that was handled by a completely not just like a different team, a different developer, published by Atari. For some reason, they grabbed the Bubsy license and they commissioned an exclusive Bubsy game. I think based off of like the Bubsy 1 design.
Ugh.
Yeah, I'm like,
what is this on?
The Atari Jaguar.
Ah,
That
Yeah,
explains why
there
no
is-
one's ever seen it.
I guess
Yeah.
that's the best place for Bubsy, seeing as to cat puns. But
I'm like,
I guess he could have been on the Lynx. That's closer to a bobcat.
yeah, it's like, apparently this game is even worse than the first one. I'm like, I can't speak to that because Atari Jaguar. How many people have even played an Atari Jaguar game? Not that many.
No.
But I'm seeing like, it's got even worse things like collision detection. Oh god, that's another thing I didn't mention about the first game. Like the collision detection was fucking terrible. The controls weren't responsive.
And terrible collision detection meshes just perfectly with one-hit kills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or fall damage, where you can be clipped outside of the fucking platform and fall to your death.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's like, and the game basically looked like a 16-bit platform game. There are better platform games to buy even on the Atari Jaguar. I would recommend the original Rayman game. I'm like, yeah, Rayman actually. If you missed our Rayman retrospective, Rayman actually got birthed on the Atari Jaguar because of power and the timing and all that stuff. But so Bubsy on the Atari Jaguar didn't really set the world on fire or have any impact whatsoever. The world, like most things Atari Jaguar, just kind of ignored it and went away.
Mm-hmm.
So failure, but kind of irrelevant. The game that really killed Bubsy until a few months ago was Bubsy 3D.
There were many atrocities committed in that game.
It somehow managed to be at least as bad of a 3D platformer as the first game managed to be bad as a 2D platformer.
A 1D platformer.
Yeah,
It
it's
would have
like-
been better as a 1D platformer.
Yeah, but yeah, Bubsy 3D is actually considered to be like one of the worst games ever made. And if you've ever seen video footage of the game, I'm like,
I'm sorry, first of all.
yeah. And I should note, by this point, also by this point, Rob Paulson wasn't the voice anymore. Lanny Minella was Bubsy at this point. And, once again, if you watch video footage, Bubsy's voice is noticeably different.
Mm-hmm. That's another comedian, though, right?
I'd have to look at.
I could be wrong. It rings a bell, but I could be wrong.
She's a regular voice actress.
Okay.
She's got a ton of roles and a whole bunch of stuff. Apparently, best known as the voice of Nancy Drew in the Nancy Drew computer games. Yeah, but I'm like, Bubsy 3D, to put it simply, is just barely a game. Like it's got some of the most rudimentary graphics, controls. Like it's got tank controls in a platform game.
You can't remember one of
Yeah,
the
and they
here.
and they don't make the jumps easy to accommodate for that, or the terrible hit detection.
Right.
Ah. And suddenly Bumsy 2 becomes a spaceship shooter.
Yeah.
Hey, becoming a spaceship shooter is not something to hold against a platformer. There are many platformers that have done that, and it has been fine.
You know,
I just
Like-
got hit from somewhere I can't see. No, there's nothing fine here.
No, that's because it's Bubsy, though. It's not because it became a spaceship shooter.
you know,
Was it better before?
Touche.
you know. Anyway, Bubsy 3D, pretty much killed the Bobcats. We thought for good because it was just that awful. Now, I suppose I should mention that the developer of the game, Eidectic, actually would go on to much bigger and better things. Today, we know them as Sony Bend. They're the creators of like the Siphon Filter series, among others. They're working on that big time zombie game, Days Gone, right now. So, clearly they cleared the hurdle of Bubsy. Accolade, not so much, as a few years later they got purchased by the ever expanding Infogrames. And Bubsy just kind of lay dormant on a shelf until one auction later, publisher Tomo resurrected Accolade, and we're getting a new Bubsy game called The Woolies Strike Back. So here's the thing about The Woolies Strike Back. By the way, the Woolies are the primary antagonist of the series.
Which is well known to anyone who played Bubsy, so no one.
They're the primary enemy in the first one in Bubsy 3D, and I guess this one. So I suppose the most inexplicable thing here is this game might actually be good. It's because, the developer, Black Forest Games, has actually done some good games. And this isn't even the most inexplicable revival they've been involved with. That goes to Gianna Sisters. Don't really have the time to go into the Gianna Sisters here. That's got its own interesting history. But that was another thing that we weren't expecting to be revived. They also did.
So there is, because it's a decent developer, there's actually a chance that this might just be a weird choice rather than actually any kind of bad game as such.
We'll see, but I'm just going in terms of developer pedigree. The Gianna Sister platform game I played was decent. It had problems, but it was surprisingly good. So, as what happens with this upcoming one, we shall see. But yeah, even if the gameplay is good, it's not really engendering me to liking Bubsy as a character.
Yeah, I mean, he's still an unlikable little shit.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they somehow rewrite his character, at which point is it really even a Bubsy game anymore?
Like, given from what I've seen, he's going to continue being Bubsy. And that's not really a thing anybody should want. Like, so right, that'll about do it for this topic. And I'm glad that we're finally done with it. I mean, it basically took 30 minutes to say Bubsy sucked, his game sucked, everything about him sucked. His new game might not suck, but him as a character will suck.
Yeah, it'll be almost weird if there's an actual. I mean, because there's a better reason to not play any of the old games other than the fact that PUBG is obnoxious. It's the games are terrible.
But here's the thing: if
It'll be
not,
weird if there's a decent game.
Yeah, if it's decent though, will they try and revive the franchise?
Well, they're already trying to do that. I mean,
like make more games other than this one.
Guys, the question here is, what could possibly go wrong?
Oh,
Get
god
the fuck
damn
out,
it!
Ogre.
you knew it was coming at some point.
For those who have successfully managed to avoid Bubsy, that's one of his obnoxious catchphrases.
That's like his premier signature catchphrase, and it's it's so easy to retort. What could possibly go wrong?
Your existence.
Yeah, it's like every goddamn thing. Right. So that'll about do it for this topic. Right. So coming up next week on Fragments of Silicon, it's actually up in the air. Our regularly scheduled guest for next week had to cancel due to travel conflicts, and they told us that he wouldn't be available again until next year because of production. They're going into heavy production after August. So we're currently looking for a replacement. No guarantees on that front right now. Like, somebody's getting back to me tomorrow. I'm like, if we have a guest to announce, we'll announce it on the Sunday reviews. Like, also, we have no Tuesday show this upcoming week. Like, so, yeah. At worst comes to worst, we're gonna have a double topic week. We'll be figuring that out on Sunday. Like, in case, I can't find somebody in time. Outside of that, we do have the regular Sunday reviews. I think I mentioned in the news segment that the first game we're reviewing is Toby the Secret Mine, one of the many games published by Head Up Games. From what I've been able to research, it started out as an iOS game, and believe me, it shows in the design. We're reviewing the PC version, even though that came out a few years ago. They recently ported this game to the PlayStation 4. And the other game we are reviewing is is very, very outside anything we have ever tackled before. It's Pro Cycling Manager 2017 edition. I've spent
that sounds like a game that exists.
I'm like, it certainly does exist. I suppose I can preface the review like this. There are two kinds of simulators in the world. There are the real simulators. I know that's odd to say, but bear with me. But there's also the parody simulators. There's the surgeon simulators. There's the goat simulators, and so on and so forth. Those simulators that are just kind of a gag.
Mm-hmm.
Pro Cycling Manager, no, this is definitely a real simulator.
I was gonna say, if it's a parody, it might actually be interesting.
I'm like, this game is definitely interesting if you're in a certain mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but that mindset has to be you want to manage a cycling team. I'm like, more on this on Sunday. How much of this game I'm actually going to play is kind of unsure, because honestly, I find the whole package to be intimidating, because I'm like, there's so much I don't know about cycling. Like,
but is this one of those simulators that has like $10,000 of DLC?
No, actually. I'm like, it's the full package. Like right out the gate. It's just
okay. That's good.
Yeah, it's just it's a realistic simulator kind of game. Like, you are keeping track of finances. You are keeping track of people. You are keeping track of injuries. You are keeping track track of a lot of things. You know, and what you're keeping track of depends on the mode. More on that on Sunday. Petty Fan, I believe you got a code of this as well. So, you'll be able to show gameplay. I mean,
Yep.
you do. All right. So, yeah, no problem, Michael. We'll have you on again.
Thanks, you guys. Have a good night.
Yes. Right. So I think that'll about do it for the broadcast. So until next time, I wish you good gaming.
Alrighty. I put us in post, so I don't know if we want to do anything or if we just want to break here.